the Dobbs decision. What's your messaging, advice to Republicans messaging abortion?
Well, lean into it. We're the pro-life party. We're going to protect the sanctity of human life. And Democrats have the radical position. They're the ones who think you should be able to take the unborn child's life right up until their birthday, for goodness sake. And they had a governor in Virginia just a few years ago who said even after that fact, you could take the life of a child. That is frightening. So lean into it and talk about we're the life that's going to protect the sanctity. We're the party that's going to protect the sanctity of human life like we've always been.
As I watched that clip, I couldn't help but think of that GIF featuring Jack Nicholson doing this. You know, like, yeah. Because what Jim Jordan is doing there is giving his Republican colleagues literally the worst advice. So have at it. Please lean into a policy that the vast majority of Americans are not in favor of. What do I mean by that? Well, recent poll that was just brought to my attention. This was a poll that was done in Texas specifically in regard to the abortion restrictions, effective abortion ban that has now taken place in Texas. And according to this recent poll by Perry Undem, which surveyed over 2,000 voters across various demos, 60% of Texas voters believe abortion should be available in all or most cases, with only 11% of Texans wanting abortion banned in all cases. 9 out of 10 surveyed also agree that Texas politicians are out of touch with their electorate on this issue. And guess what? So that's one poll. You might be saying, Anna, you're putting too much weight on one poll. What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, fine. Why don't we take a look at Republican politicians, Republican candidates specifically, who are very quietly erasing anti-abortion language from their campaign websites, starting with Blake Masters. Until recently, Blake Masters' campaign website promoted him as a 100% pro-life candidate and pledged support for a federal personhood law, ideally a constitutional amendment that recognizes that unborn babies are human beings that may not be killed. Then, recently, his website's language had changed. The reference to Masters as a 100% pro-life candidate, gone. Mention of the personhood law, that vanished too. And guess what? Masters ain't the only one. Here's another one. Something similar has happened in Michigan, where Republican State Senator Tom Barrett is running for a US House seat. Barrett's website once touted his opposition to abortion under any circumstance and his promise that, quote, I will always work to protect life from conception. As recently as this past May, he told Melissa Nan Burke of the Detroit News he opposed allowing abortion in cases of rape or incest, but at some point, the abortion section vanished from his website. And both Masters and Barrett later changed their messaging to focus solely on late-term abortions.
Yeah, so I used to say this all the time on the show. I dated someone who was Jamaican a while back, and her uncle used to say, whoever wants to stay, whoever wants run. Okay, so here's Republicans, run. So every part of this is funny and very important, by the way. So I'm gonna get to the politics of this in a second, but I'm gonna give you one more Republican. This is from HuffPost, I'm quoting now. And the website for Mark Ronchetti, GOP candidate for governor of New Mexico, who in a previous campaign said that, quote, life should be protected at all stages, now promises a middle ground approach that focuses on prohibiting late-term abortion. Oh, all of a sudden, whoever wants run. He's found the middle ground. Before, couldn't find the middle ground when he was in the primary, when the polling hadn't come out, when Republicans hadn't lost yet on this issue. He was all stages prohibited. No, what did the poll say? The poll said that? God damn, middle ground. I meant middle ground. I just scrub, middle ground. Guys, it isn't just that the Tim Ryan won in New York with a 12-point swing that they didn't expect in the polling. Not Tim Ryan, Pat Ryan. Tim Ryan's running in Ohio for the Senate. It isn't just the Kansas results that were shocking 60-40 win for pro-choice in Kansas with more Republicans voting than Democrats and independents. It's that they see the polling in their own races and they're in a cold sweat panic over it.
Which proves something that I've been saying on this show over and over again for years, which is that the abortion issue was never about life or death for the politicians who purport to care about life, okay? It was always about power. It was always about control. I mean, I shared this on the show recently, Cenk, but I'm gonna repeat it because it took 5 years after the Roe v. Wade ruling for Jerry Falwell to say anything about that ruling. 5 years went by, he didn't have any objections to it until he realized that he and other evangelical leaders in the country could use it as a wedge issue to galvanize religious extremists in this country, right? And to organize them to ensure that there would be a religious voting bloc that had some leverage in politics. That's what it was always about. It was about power and control. That's it.
So now let's talk about unsavory politicians on both sides. Meanwhile, when Roe got overruled, the Democrats rushed out with their emails telling you to donate to them. But when asked if they would make a political issue out of it in the midterms, they were very equivocal. They were not at all sure. And you saw them giving quotes about, well, we'll see. In other words, I'm gonna check the polling first. What happened? I thought you cared about protecting women's rights, or you were really gung-ho about that. No, it's always about power and money. Okay, so the Democrats, and what did Pelosi do? Right after the decision came out, she went and supported Cuellar, who's anti-choice. And he barely won in a Democratic primary. His primary opponent was a perfectly good Democrat who was pro-choice, but Pelosi helped to end her pro-choice career, at least in that election. Why? Because he doesn't really care about the issue. But now that the polling has come in, the Democrats are like, yeah, we meant we're gonna protect your rights. Absolutely, okay? So they're saying that. Meanwhile, look at what Jim Jordan said. The first clip we showed you guys. They're now switching to the only tenable political position. In the polling, it indicates that, well, Americans do generally have a problem with late-term abortion. Well, good news, Roe prohibited late-term abortions. So now they're Republicans, so they're in a tough spot because basically the American people believe that Roe is exactly right, okay? So what do they do instead? They just start lying. They're like, oh, the Democrats want to do abortions right up to the minute that the kid is going to be born.
Some of them claim that abortions happen right after the baby is born, which, by the way, I believe we have laws against that. Laws pertaining to murder. That would be considered murder, literal murder.
No, but there's no end to how unintelligent Republican voters are these days. It's not just Jim Jordan who just implied it. Ted Cruz outright said it. So many Republican politicians are calling it post-birth abortion. That's literally not a thing. You can't have a post-birth abortion. A post-birth would be killing an independent,
viable
human being, right? They're outside the womb. It is like that's saying, oh, you know what? OJ did a post-birth abortion on Nicole Simpson, et cetera. What, they were in their 30s or 40s, right? It doesn't matter, it's a post-birth abortion now, it's not murder. Like, what, are you guys lunatics?
Yes.
There is no such thing. Yet Republicans lie about it through their teeth. And since the media has gotten so used to Republicans being inveterate liars, that they don't even fact check them anymore. I've seen now countless articles where a Republican will talk about post-birth abortion, or will say, in every article they say, the Democrats want to do abortions up to the minute that there's a birth. And the goddamn reporter doesn't even bother correcting it. Doesn't even bother saying, oh, this is a lie. It's obviously not remotely true, and that's not what Roe v. Wade says at all. It says the opposite, that you can't have one in the third trimester. Because now we've just surrendered and it's said, okay, yeah, Republicans are allowed to lie.
Yeah, I mean, the other lie that they love to tell is that parents are like clamoring to do hysterectomies and sex changes for their minor children. No one's doing that. That's not happening, okay? Minors are not getting hysterectomies in this country.
Just a brazen lie.
Yeah, brazen lie.
But if you, on CNN, if you say that Republicans lie on a regular basis, and this is provable on this issue, and on the issue that Anna mentioned, very regular basis, they say it more often than they don't say it, and it is a provable 100% lie. If you say that fact on CNN, you'll be fired. You were unfair to Republicans by pointing out that they're not telling the truth. You should allow them to lie. But if a Democrat ever says anything that isn't true, well, if they're a corporate Democrat, also let that go. But if they're a progressive, bash the living crap out of them. What part of this is fair or neutral or objective? No, he's 1,000% lying, and so is every Republican that says that. But anyway, hey guys, it's your political funeral, Republicans. You want to keep dying on that hill? Go for it. Go for it. Say it loud and say it proud. Say it like Jim Jordan. Take his dumbass advice. Look, a guy that he worked with took his advice and kept molesting kids. He said, don't worry, I'm not going to turn you in. You keep on going. And the guy molested dozens of more kids. So now he's telling the Republican Party, hey, take my advice. Let's lean into running on abortion, where we've lost at least 70% of the country, but maybe way more.
Yeah.
Have at it, Hoss.
Molested college wrestlers, let's be specific.
Okay, so they were, some of them were teenagers, but they were above age, presumably, since they were in college. And so, Jim Jordan, you should be really proud of that record. Rumor. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.